Since starting my ventures into the world of writing about portable video games, I've heard all this chatter, all this positive talk about a certain little handheld they called the Neo Geo Pocket. Now, it's not something I've ever had any experience with, save from hearing and seeing the name every now and then. I never had one as a younger person. By the time it came out in 1998, I'd already kind of moved on to PC games. But when you spend so much time in the handheld retro gaming world as I have done over the past few years, you can't help but be exposed to other aspects of the niche. Growing up with the Game Boy as I did, I was always aware of other handhelds that were available. A few of my friends had the good old Sega Game Gear and even let me play on it sometimes, not for long admittedly because the batteries would run out, and I remember seeing the Atari Lynx in a dark corner of this game shop I used to go to and being thoroughly confused by what it even was. Nobody had one that I can recall. They were earlier contemporaries of the Game Boy, of course, and by the mid-90s had their support from Sega and Atari kinda slashed in favor of new generations of home consoles to varying degrees of success. The Neo Geo Pocket, when it launched in late 1998, seemed, to all intents and purposes, kinda late to the party. Nintendo had already brought out the colorized version of their 8-bit machine before this came out, and so, less than 5 months after the monochrome NGP, I'm gonna have to figure out if I like the sound of that acronym. NGPC especially is a bit of a mouthful. In March 1999, the Neo Geo Pocket Color hit the shelves, and was, by all accounts, much more successful. After a bumpy start, SNK finally had a viable competitor to Nintendo. The black and white games still worked, and with only 3 exceptions would get colorized reissues anyway. What's more, they were kind of on their own against the world too. Sega's Nomad wasn't really a proper handheld. Besides, they were having a hard enough time with their Saturn console, although the upcoming Dreamcast would keep Sega afloat for a little bit longer. Atari's commercial failure with the Jaguar had seen them hang up their video game boots long since. So realistically, it was Nintendo and the new boys SNK fighting over the handheld market. Not that it was much of a fight, admittedly. Bandai would soon release the Wonder Swan, which showed a bit of promise due to being spearheaded by none other than Game Boy creator Gunpei Yokoi, but again, something just felt lacking. Call it a stranglehold if you want, you wouldn't be wrong. Nintendo certainly succeeded in cornering the market, despite SNK's console outperforming theirs arguably from a technical standpoint. Looking at the Neo Geo Pocket's library, you can immediately see the problem. There are barely any third-party publishers using the system, with the majority of titles coming out of SNK's, admittedly healthy, catalogs. But that was always going to have its limitations, sadly. Anyway, that's enough about Nintendo. We talk about them enough on the regular show. Now look, I'm sure you're all aware that I'm no tech whiz by any means. I barely even know what a CPU actually does, so I'm not going to talk about the technical details of this console, as there are plenty of more knowledgeable people out there in YouTube land that you should be listening to if that's your bag. What I will say is that I'm quote-unquote aware that the Neo Geo Pocket Color, hell, let's just call it Neo Geo for the sake of this series, shall we? That's too many words. And just saying Pocket or Color is gonna get confusing, seeing as how Nintendo had 2 consoles called exactly those names. I'm aware that the Neo Geo is a stronger console than the Game Boy Color by most metrics you could care to measure it by. But that never stopped Nintendo, whose success was built on their catalog of titles and the exclusivity thereof. But what I can and will talk about is how the games feel to me, however nebulous a concept that might be. It'll be an organic viewpoint from a guy super familiar with one console and a complete virgin to the other. What you're seeing on screen with these Neo Geo reviews will virtually always be my first experiences with that particular game, so I hope to be able to provide a genuine impression for you. Not saying I'm becoming a React channel, that is the lowest echelon of content right there, but I digress. I seem to remember a while back playing a baseball launch title as the first episode in a now hundreds deep video series and being thoroughly disheartened by it, wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Baseball was not a good starting point for sports games on the Game Boy. Fortunately, SNK already had a lot of pedigree with this series, with the first Baseball Stars coming out on the NES way back in 1989, and a couple of sequels a few years later. It was rather excellent for the time, ranking very highly among the many baseball sims the NES boasted. You could not only play a super smooth simulation of the sport, but could also customize and even manage your own teams. It was the first sports game on the console to feature battery backup, meaning it was possible to take your franchise through a whole league season if you wanted. There's also something of a role-playing element to the affair, as each game you win earns you money directly related to the sum of the prestige ratings of the two teams, basically how many paying fans turned up to watch. You can use this money to purchase new players or train up various aspects of the ones you have. This management season stuff has sadly been stripped away from the handheld version, leaving just the very solid gameplay to hold the cartridge up, and it definitely manages this. Immediately, I was not daunted, but excited by the prospect of starting to review a brand new library, and it's just a baseball game, a genre which I've not had the best of times with so far. The frame rate is buttery smooth, with some simple but super effective animations bringing the players to life. Controls are very simple. All you do is place your batter where you want him and press A with the correct timing to hit. You can direct your hits intuitively with the directional buttons, and more often than not it works as you want it to, provided you've got the timing down right. The game does everything it can to help you when you're at the plate. The fielders are quite generous with what they'll fail to catch, your runners don't dawdle about too badly, and the third basemen don't seem to have very powerful arms. When you're pitching though, it'll balance out, so don't think you've got everything easy. Fielding is not automatic. You'll have to move your guys manually and throw to the desired bases by pressing right, up or left along with A when you've got the ball. You can dive to make catches if it looks like you're not going to be near the flight of the ball, but don't think for a second that this is easy to pull off. When it works though, you'll feel like $1 million, so don't give up. Baseball Stars doesn't get bogged down with too many features, neither on the options side of things nor in-game itself. It's just a really solid, addictive, utterly playable rendition of baseball. Almost as if to show Nintendo how a sports game launch title should be done, this is never going to win any realism awards or be acclaimed for its depth. What it does really well and is quite the start for the console, it must be said.